Dorothea Lange has a quote that goes, "A camera teaches you how to see without a camera." When you think about it, it is so true. As photographers, we see the world a little differently than other people. This visualization is a conscious process we use to create visually impactful images, whether they be landscapes, nature, or wildlife. Andy will walk you through the process of several aspects of pre-visualization. How to pre-visualizing, uh, I'm sorry, how pre-visualizing how an image will appear after the thought process is completed with the click of the shutter button in his program, Previsualization, Seeing Photographically. Andy has been a Lakewood-based photographer who ran First Light photo workshops for 26 years and who has spoken to the Evergreen Camera Club numerous times over the years. Yeah, I think just say in the last decade, you've probably spoken 3 or 4 times. So you're probably our most popular speaker, Andy.
Well, thank you.
And Andy, you can find Andy's website at firstlighttours.com. Also just to let you all know, I have this book that Andy, I love this book, Andy. So, and I'm sure you have other books that you've published, but this is the one that I keep on my desk. So take it away.
All right. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Think you need to allow me to do my screen?
No, Andy, you can just go ahead and click on share screen down there at the bottom.
There we are. All right, we're gonna do a little exploring here and let a few people with some comments they make and then build off of that with a very interesting program. As Ellen mentioned at the beginning, the Dorothea Lange quote, "A camera teaches you how to see without a camera. Teaches you how to see water running over the rocks and thinking in your mind, okay, there's this scene with the water over the rocks, but to do a very long exposure of it, to be able to get that mystical waters slightly running over large rocks in a stream. Teaches you to see the forest for the trees. Here you have a whole hillside of aspen through the aspen bowls. One of my favorite fall shots, concentrating on finding a gap and looking and seeing and getting that nice palette behind the aspen trunks. Teaches you to see things that really aren't there. Over at Arches, it was a very, very ugly, cloudy evening. But of course, we still went out and we got set up on that little bluff opposite Balanced Rock and just sort of waited to see what developed. And then there was some little breaks in the clouds and then that tiny little bit of color right at the horizon at sunset that just adds, I think, a lot to the image. It breaks up the total monochromatic of it. Teaches you to see the minute details of flowers looking and digging in immensely. This is with a 180 macro, extension tubes, and a 1.4 teleconverter to get extremely close with a 2 to 3 to 1 life size, but also no depth of field, because you know how close stamens are with each other, that all of the others in the background are out of focus, and there's that one in focus, and then the color blends of everything together, whereas it teaches you to see this minute detail and beauty that's there. Teaches you to see the clusters on a king cormorant in the Falkland Islands. I've been there before, and I'd noticed all of the details around the eyes, and I really wanted to accentuate that. Many other people who go down there, workshop leaders, they say you don't need a huge lens to be able to capture everything down there. I still take my 600 and I pay extra for the flying around on the small planes to be able to get shots like this, to really get close, tight in on the bird, to bring out that extreme detail of the purple around the eye, and then that gold cluster of the male fading down around towards the eye. Teaches you to see when an adult is coming in towards the nest, that you know in the back of your mind something's going to happen. Whenever an adult heads back to a nest, there's going to be some wonderful interaction. I was right at the end of our time here, and I'm like, okay, I got to wait a minute or two to get this, because I saw the mother coming in towards the nest and the baby's starting to get excited with the black-browed albatross, and just precious moment there. But you know in the back of your mind something's going to happen. Teaches you to see that after the bears leave the mouth of a river, as the tide is coming in and the water is rising and it's getting too high for the bears to fish for the salmon, that other things are going to come in and fish for the salmon, with the seal swallowing and catching salmon. You'd look for a swirl in the water and know, okay, I got to go right there, and focus right there, because it then comes up to get the fish going straight down. One person on the trip got a shot of swallowing an eel, and it was about 1.5 feet outside its mouth, sticking straight up, squirming all over the place to get the shot. Visualization is a conscious process of projecting the final photographic image in the mind before taking the first steps in actually photographing the subject. Ansel Adams. Ansel has so many tremendous quotes. to be able to use and think of when you're out in the field. Here, visualization, it's a conscious process. You of the projecting the final image. So you're thinking, okay, what do I want to do here? And you do that before you start actually setting up and getting everything ready for your first shot. This up at Mount Rainier took me about 5 minutes or more to completely set the shot up. If you look at it, how the curve of the green, you have the paintbrush in the foreground, and where you have Mount Rainier reflecting in the lake, the curve of the green grasses there, it took me forever to get that set up, and then getting hyperfocal distance set up, and then to get the spacing for everything. You look at the layers throughout here. You have the flowers, the green, the reflection, the trees, and the mountain and sky. Think in layers when you're doing something, and it's a conscious process to put all of that together and then really work to fine tune with your tripod exactly where and how to get it set up, instead of just going up there aimlessly. Oh, this looks nice, I'm taking a picture. Obviously, I wanted a lot more than, oh, this looks nice, I'm taking a picture. Work to get that image just the way you want it. And over in Iceland, getting up extremely early for a sunrise, and with the Crystal Beach at the glacial, Jökulsárlón, the glacial lagoon, out at the beach, you get all these ice chunks out there, and then obviously you can see the grit and dirt on it. I stood it up and positioned it because when I saw that chunk of ice, it's like, that's the chunk I want to use to be able to get and do something. It has some shape and form to it with it standing up with it. And then with the clouds down at White Sands, that V shape of the clouds, and then how puffy they were. They're just some perfect clouds. I needed something that sort of mirrored that in the foreground to help accentuate and work with those clouds that are in the sky. And on the Oregon coast, I really like doing extremely long exposures with water movement on the oceans and such. And here, the waves would be coming in and putting, and then going back out, but they'd leave just a hint of water up on the beach. And it had I noticed it had a very nice reflection in it with mirroring the colors of the sky. So got positioned to be able to get myself up so that the water, when it did come all the way up, wouldn't get me, but still got all of the ground in the foreground covered to be able to get that reflection on the beach. And that's water, misty water in Acadia, Maine, about a 15-second exposure just before sunrise to get that really nice softness to the water, the movement of the water, and a little bit of mist over the water. You look at the furthest out rocks in the foreground, and you can see a little bit of that mist. But seeing that and going, okay, here's what I want to do with this image. This is the feeling I want to portray, the nice, really soft water. I was talking people through, do very long exposures to soften out the water as much as possible, to then get the sky, little bit of light on the rocks, but then the really soft water going through your mind, thinking of what you're wanting the final image to portray, and then working through the steps to get there. Unfortunately, we can't take this image anymore. That is no longer there with the fire they had, which is an absolute shame. So dramatic of a building inside and out. But coming down the Seine and getting out on the bridge and getting everything lined up just right to get the repetition of the bridges, the reflections, the light reflections in the water, and then waiting and waiting for there to not be a boat coming down through, because there's 4 or 5 companies that have these big boats going down the river around this island right there, and then circling back. But I knew what I wanted with the shot. I just had to get in the right position, get everything lined up properly, and then wait for there to be no tour boats coming down through the scene. At Mono Lake in California, sunrise with the tufas out in the water. But the process here, okay, there everything is. But I wanted the one in the bottom right-hand corner to just be pointing out a little bit. And over here on the left side, with the 3 on the left side, I wanted space between each one. So I had to bring my tripod legs together just a little bit to bring the camera up a little higher to give so that there's water space and not the black to the black with the first 2 in the bottom left-hand corner with the space there, and then get myself positioned so that there was space between the one in the middle and the third one in the background, and then let everything else fall where it is. It's looking at it, thinking, what do I want? what's my final shot do I want to do? So getting everything set up just right with the composition. Take your time. You have your time in situations like this. So, and the other shots, you can take your time, get everything set up just right, and then you have your shot. In my mind's eye, I visualize how a particular sight and feeling will appear on a print. If it excites me, there's a good chance it will make a good photograph. Again, Ansel. He made a few good prints. So imagine being out there with Ansel and trying to be in his mind with what he's thinking about with the sight and the feeling, and putting it out for the final print. Here in Maine, soon as I saw this, I'm like, I love this. That's going to be a picture. I have a 20, I think it's a 20 by 30, and then matted and framed up larger of this print hanging up in my place. Love it so much. But you see it, you visualize it before you start getting everything set up. The colors here so vibrant, and the details in with the leaves on the vine, the tree, and then the soft yellow in the background. I've gone back to that tree 2 or 3 times since I took that shot, and there hasn't been a vine of the red leaves going up at this place since the one time I saw it. This one is a little bit different, but I knew as I was starting to take the pictures, this is going to be a nice print. The feeling of this. You have to get out here at this lighthouse about 2.5 hours before sunset, and crawl and scramble down a lot of rocks and get in position. You stake out your area, because then everybody else starts showing up and they try to get out on the rocks in front of you, and you're calling out, nope, you're in my picture. It's like, I've been here for 2 hours, so sorry, you can leave there. But with the clouds and the light and everything with this is a time when you use your split neutral densities and you angle them. I have them, you can sort of see right where you're wanting to angle your split neutral density with the rocks in the foreground and then the sky. This is a good place to be able to work and show how to use those filters a little differently than what you typically think straight up and down your horizon with it. Up in Yellowstone, a foggy morning. It was one of those, when we went by it, it wasn't quite like this. And on our return drive back by it, the fog had just settled in and is like, whoa, we're stopping. and everybody's piling out of cars and capturing this scene here. But as soon as you see it, you know, I like this. Keep this picture in mind for one later on, and you'll see a stark difference. But when you see it, you start thinking, okay, how do I want to do this? I saw those little grasses over on the right side, so I didn't want to put the trees over on the right, and there's nothing to the left. Those little grasses in the bottom right add just enough other to it to give it a nice feeling. There was a super bloom in Southern California a couple years ago, right on the interstate. This place was getting packed with people. I roamed around there for several hours one afternoon, evening, because the sun was setting behind me and wanted light up on the hillsides. And it wasn't until I got way back on the trail that I found this shot that as soon as I saw it, it's like, okay, here it is. I've got tripod legs splayed out on the ground. I'm crawling, laying around on the ground on a wide walking path to get the strength of those poppies in the foreground blending in with the hillsides above, and then the clouds just added that nice feeling to the image. There's the feeling, the ideas, and everything. You know that, okay, I have a print of this hanging up, and you just know that it's going to translate nicely to a print when you're taking the image. And down at the White Sands, thought process here, unlike the other one where the yucca was in front of the clouds, well, I did not want to interfere with these beautiful clouds at sunset. So position so that the yucca is right at the edge of the clouds, filling a little bit of a somewhat dead space up there, but everything blends together so nicely. It's the process of getting in the right position, getting down low so that you're even with it down low, getting as much yucca up in the sky as possible. Because whenever you have the yucca and get foreground mountains, hills, the sand, up to the top of the lower portion, it takes away with all you have hanging up there is just the stalks of the pods. I know I can't see everybody's hands, but how many people have been down to Daniels Park between Highlands Ranch and Sedalia? You know, there's this beautiful old red barn out there. Well, after a good snow and it's going to be a clear morning, beautiful place to go and get this barn with the light just hitting the mountains in the background. There's a bison herd here as well. A little bit further to go for bison. There's remnants of the bison out there, but I knew before I went what I was wanting. I got up and it's like, I'm going down to Daniels Park to get that barn. There was a good snow dump, and then it's going to be a clear morning to be able to get that shot. On my France trip, we do dinner at this little cafe right off of a block from the river. And then we walk over and walk down the Seine for several miles, doing images from different angles of the Eiffel Tower, go all the way down to Notre Dame. It's just a wonderful evening. And here you can see where my thought process was with this. Have the blue, white, and red of the French flag reflecting in the water right there, and then all of the other colors reflecting in the water is just a beautiful setting. Canola up in the Palouse. You never know year to year where the canola is going to be growing. That it was in the foreground with those silos. It was just getting everything compositionally the way wanted it portrayed in the shot. Look at the layers, the yellow, the green hillside, and then those just couple of cloud puffs sitting there, adding some balance to the white of the grain silos there. This is a very old shot. Years ago, Fall Color, Southern Colorado, south of, what's that mine down there? There's an old deserted gold mine down there. It's south of Monte Vista in that area, but came around a corner and there it was, this cabin so isolated out there. As soon as I saw it, is like, I've got to get right where I think it's going to make the best image. And look at all the layers here, the cabin with these trees, the snow, some more trees, a little bit of light, then more trees, all of those layers that just walk you up through the image. And when you see a shot, you know that it's going to make a good image. That's when you spend a bit of time with it. Up in the Tetons, it's not a very well-known cabin. Does not get a lot of people back to it. It's off the beaten path, but everybody enjoys going here when we stop at it, and everybody takes their time getting everything set up with the angles and everything. You have the cottonwoods in the foreground, the mountains in with the window, and then the frame and just everything about it just speaks nicely. When you see it, it's like, yep, I'm gonna like this one. The single most important component of a camera is the 12 inches behind it. Ansel has some great ones. I think this is his best. It's not the equipment, it's the photographer, fully the photographer. This is the image used in the promoting the program. Knowing what to do to paint with light, to get the Milky Way as vibrant and strong as it is. The camera isn't going to just go out there and take this picture. The photographer has to know what they're doing to be able to get the final result together. I went here with a friend, and not on a trip, just a couple of us go, he and I going, and he was standing right next to me and took this same shot and worked it. He won the grand prize in his county fair with this image. Not surprised at all. It's the photographer. I have the program Star Stacks, and I knew there had to be some other use for this program other than stacking stars together to make star trails. So when I got here on the Maine coast, we had this incredible sunset developing. So I set up my intervalometer on the camera, remote on the camera, to take a picture every 8 seconds, I think it was, because the clouds were moving at a pretty good pace. And this is 54 images stacked together. If I wasn't able to get a great stack, I still had numerous incredible single shot sunsets that were just as nice. But I knew there was a way to be able to do something with the program to really create something visually dynamic. And I believe I captured that there. You have the spray of the color of the clouds going up, just everything with it. Knowing and experimenting with holding and jiggling your camera. You can do it with a hand hold with just a jiggle, but I keep it on my tripod and just do so that there's some stability, and then just do a forward and back with the body to just get a little bit of a jiggle to get the abstract effect of the aspen bowls. A multiple exposure. I have found that 5 shots seems to work best. You do 1 shot and then just move it up just a slight amount. Take your second shot up just a little bit, third, fourth, and fifth shots there to get this complete coverage of filling the frame with the cottonwoods. And getting the right exposures. You do too long of an exposure of the reflections in the water, and it washes everything out. Too short of an exposure, there's too much detail. You have a few times to do this because I'm standing there with a pocket full of rocks and throwing rocks out in the water to get the ripple effect. And we would stand at an area like this for 20 minutes or so until everybody gets a shot that really looks nice, this nice mosaic of the reflections and everything in the water. And knowing what to do to be able to create a kaleidoscope. This is one image, and then you flip it, and you have the top section. You can see the repeating areas. You have the real tall one, and then a couple of other spikes left and right. And you flip it to duplicate it, flip it, and then merge it. Then you combine it together, duplicate it again, rotate it around to the side, and give yourself 4 points there to create that really nice kaleidoscope, to create that white background. Yeah, with this shot was a lot of work to clean up everything to create the white background. But on my flower techniques class, this is one of the things we spend a bit of time with, showing how to do all of the steps to be able to create an image like this. Knowing that if you stop your pan before the shutter closes, you freeze part of the image. Here we have the color and the tree trunks. I'm panning with it, but stopping the pan before the shutter closes, you freeze the tree trunks. So you have that image of the wash of color, but then you also have the in focus, mostly in focus, tree trunks frozen in there. Double exposure. Camera Live makes it this much easier today. You can do your first shot, flower in focus, and then use Camera Live to set up your second shot with your out of focus, and it still shows you the placement of the original shot there before you take your second image. Yeah, the equipment keeps getting further and further out there to allow you to do things like this. The photographer has to know exactly how to create a hyperfocal distance shot so that something inches in front of you is in focus and the mountains in the background are in focus. American Basin. Love that place. The photographer knowing what's getting ready to happen. I had the shot of the heron just there in the water, but then got myself at an angle with the direction he was facing. There was a slight breeze coming from the right, knowing that it was going to take off to the right. So standing there waiting while the color was going in the sky and in the water reflections, just waiting for that moment. Soon as it started to move, tall birds like this, they're going to bend their legs before they launch to take off from anything, whether they're standing in the water, standing on the ground, perched on a tree. They've got long legs like that. Look for the knee bend. And soon as it did the knee bend, it's knowing that and start firing away, because it's going to be taking off soon as it does the knee bend. And here, the eagles were coming in and landing at this one perch area or snag out on the sandbars up at the Chilcat. And this one was coming in, and I knew it was going to be arcing and angling to be able to go there. The wind position was just right. The light was just right to get all of that wonderful detail. And then the settings that I prefer with birds in flight. Just everything worked together to be able to create this strong image. Taking an image, freezing a moment, reveals how rich reality truly is. Nobody's name on there because that's an Andyism. You want to be able to freeze that moment. Yeah, show of hands, how many people have this shot? But up on Mount Evans, the baby goat's just springing off the rock up there. You know which rock this probably is too. And freezing that moment, that's reality right here. That's that moment in time shot that really captures it all. Down at Bosque, that moment, the interaction between the sand hills, where they're both jumping up, doing their thing with their bonding behavior, that freezing that moment to get that shot. Freeze that moment to get as its feet are just barely touching the water and getting that initial little sharp spray of the water coming up. That moment, it's just about to catch a dragonfly right down below her. Getting that moment. Over in Iceland, they have what's called the blue bubble. It's a geyser that it builds up. It's typically, while it's sitting there, is just the water's flat. But as it's building up steam and power inside, this bubble starts coming up. And right at the initial blast of it erupting, it goes about 40 feet in 30, 40 feet in the air. But you want to just capture this initial burst through there, that timing of it. That timing of right at sunrise as the sun's coming up through the windows of this church out on one of the peninsulas and on the east coast of Iceland, way out at the end. Snæfellsnes, I believe, is the peninsula this one is on. But the timing of it, to just get that moment, that's the reality of it. And Mr. Elk giving the evil eye to another elk over off to the side. That moment with that stare and glare, you know he means business. They mean business. That moment right there, shooting away as they're interacting with each other, just getting that paw up in there with it. That this is on Kodiak Island. That moment, I was actually just doing the dewdrop off of the leaf, but just so happened the sun started cresting the mountain in the background and made for the perfect timing of a shot with that sun star of the sun just cresting the mountain and in that drop with the reflection and everything else with it. Previsualization can also be going into a shoot with ideas already in mind. In the Falklands, one of the islands, Saunders Island, you hope there's a roaring sea one of your days there, so that you've got this waves crashing all over the place and the rock hoppers coming up out of the water, out of that turbulence. You see how mean that sea is. And you know, okay, we've got nasty weather today. I'm going down there and parking it today because this is a shot going in, know you want to get. And then later that evening, no, this was a different year. Again, at the Palouse, we were about to drive up Steptoe Butte, and the double rainbow appeared. And it's going to take a few minutes to drive up to the top, about 10 minutes or so to get up there, to get at an angle to shoot out across flat fields to the east to capture the double rainbow. But then I stopped at the bottom and I sat there and I looked down at the road and looked at the rainbow, and I backed up and went around. People with me are like, "Where do you think you're going?" I says, "I have something in mind that I think is going to be a better shot." And by knowing the area, when we got to this, we were the only ones here. The combine being out there was just an added bonus. It was typically just the hay barn there with a nice color on it that I knew was there, and was pretty sure we would be able to get a good angle with the rainbow and it. And then we also had the combine, then the fence, and everything else just so nicely together. And knowing before I went one year going down to White Sands, we were having a full moon. This is an hour after sunset. It looks like daylight. The clouds and sky look like it's just at sunset, but the shadows and everything belie that. But knowing we had a full moon, to be able to do some full moon shots one night really worked to advantage. I'd seen one shot previously of the albatross with the head tucked under wings resting. But when I got this shot, the way the feathering was coming up between its eyes made it even nicer than the one I had seen. A little bit of flooding, I would say. You look to where the back of these trees are, that's usually solid ground all the way out to the trees. So I knew I was going and was wanting to capture this extreme flood. You can see that it's gone down a little bit, but with having an idea in mind before going out and then getting there to find the shot that's going to work best. You can see houses right on the back shoreline. They were a little nervous. We've had that here a time or two. Over at Arches, you know you want to get a great sunrise or sunset shot. That's everything everybody hopes for over there. Painted Ladies in San Francisco, that's a shot. Anybody who's been to San Francisco and done photography is going to go here and get this shot. It's just getting right conditions, right light, right timing to get the nice image. You go to Florida, you want to get the big birds catching something. Here, the reddish egret was something right between the beak there to get ready to swallow. You go up the San Wash Basin. What do you know you hope to try to get? Of all the times I've gone up there, I've had this one night where a horse is up on a rise above me with the dusty, colorful sunset. You hope for it, but yeah, yep. You never know if you'll get it. When people ask me what equipment I use, I tell them my eyes. Use my eyes. I saw this egret hunting, catching sand eels, and it would come up to this one spot on the beach to fight with it, to then swallow it. And so every time it would go back out into the water, I'd inch myself a little bit closer so that I could get this large frame filling shot of it here. He caught about a dozen or so sand eels.
Mm.
Yeah, roseate, that's an immature, just a month old. They grow really fast, probably 6 weeks. It's fledged. It's doing one of its first flights. There's nests in this mangrove island. I rent a boat and we go out and spend several hours going around this little island and doing shots of them. But I'm constantly watching, using my eyes to look when roseates fly off and leave the nest. So I'm then staring and looking the skies, looking for a roseate to come back in to the nest area. So everybody else is shooting things. I'm sitting there in the driver's seat looking for roseates in the sky and then calling out which direction they're coming from. And then I'm just using a 100 to 400 right here because I can't be set up using a big lens. And I'm just grab it, pull it up to my eye and take a few shots as it's getting in position. But using your eye to look for the birds coming in to a nest area. Use your eyes to look for compositions that really speak out to you. I love morning angled light coming from the side, not hitting the background to really accentuate the colors of the cattle egret here. Done this as a black and white. I think it's stronger, but when I do my flower techniques class at the Botanic Gardens, and then we also go down to the Rose Garden at Sterner Lake, and we also do some in-room stuff and then a lot of computer work. But I know that early in the mornings at the Botanic Gardens, when we do an early entry, they have sprinklers going out on the flowers and such. And these things always have a bunch of spider webs around them. So I was just looking for one of those that had the ideal water droplets all over and around it. And at White Sands, just looking for the nice compositions. In Maine, the trees in color and doing an abstract little jiggle up and down to give it a nice wash, if you like that type of thing. The details of go get flowers at the store, Gerber daisy, the extreme details. You can practice with angles with off camera flash to put some shadows in there and work the details with that. Again, to use my eyes to look for that light angle, light coming from the side, no light on the background to make the subject really jump out at you. And then the Northern Lights, Ellen showed my book on it. This is a feast for the eyes, just being able to see and experience this. You just stand back and enjoy and watch the sky light up. And that would be it. Oh,
That was great.
thank you. You want to take it back?
Sure. You can just say unshare screen or something.
I just like turned it on.
Whoop.
Go to the top.
Oh, let me quit out.
Yeah, no, I'm on. Yeah. Hey, Andy, can you hear me? So I have a question, because at one point you were talking about using a 100 to 400 lens for wildlife, for the one that was brilliant, that roseate.
Yes.
Yeah. And oh, sorry, I'm sorry. Yeah, I turned it down. I turned my computer down when I was listening. So alternatively, like a 500, you would use like a 500 to 600 prime.
Typically, I'm only using my 600 for almost all wildlife. But there's an occasion down in Florida where I'll just use my 100 to 400 when we're out on the boat and I'm driving the boat around this island. I can't get set up because everybody else is set up on the boat with their lenses. So I can only sit at my spot. I have one little hole I can shoot through to just pull the camera up and grab a few shots. And then when we go to Barbie Preserve and we go walking several miles, I don't want to lug my 600 out with me.
Fully,
there.
so
those,
yeah.
And then at the alligator farm, I have my 600 and I also have the 100 to 400 because things are so close to you that you can reach out and smack them in the head if you want. They're nesting right next to the boardwalk. So those areas, I'll use the 100 to 400, but primarily I'm using the 600.
Right. I just like wanted, is it okay if I tell people, like the way I know you, that I went on your trip to Alaska? Well, first I met you in the Falkland Islands. I was alone, but you were taking a group, and they were all telling me you should go on a photo trip with Andy because he's an amazing instructor. You know, like you will never get that experience otherwise. So then I went with Andy to Alaska, which was absolutely true. Like it was an amazing trip. So, and I knew like nothing about photography. So while, I mean, I was specifically interested in wildlife photography, and Andy gave me directives that changed my life around that. So just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
That was a wonderful program, Andy. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty.
Thanks a lot, Andy. Great stuff.
A lot of beautiful images. Thank you, Andy.
Yeah. So does anybody have any questions for Andy?
Andy, I was wondering
how many times you said something about, I just saw the shot and took it.
No.
I think there was more to it than that, but you're incredible.
Instead of just coming up and seeing the shot and taking it, you take the time and put the effort in to get a really good shot.
Right.
Yeah, you don't, most of those things, except for the wildlife, have a little bit of time to be able to set it up and fine tune the composition or the technique or whatever to get the best image that you can. We have this incredible equipment. Let's take full advantage of it and use our minds a little bit to think it through, like, okay, what do I want to do here? And really work to get the best shot.
Well, I think what you taught me about, Andy, is like how important it was to focus on animal behavior.
Yes.
I know that, like, that takes a long time, right? Like, know in advance the behavior you're looking for and get your photography equipment set up in advance because you're looking for certain behaviors. Like, oh, if that bird does this, you know, it's going to be taking off or whatever.
Yeah, bending, the tall birds are going to bend their knees before they launch and take off. If you know that, you're halfway there to getting that initial launch shot instead of just blindly standing there going, okay, there it's taking off. Well, you missed the shot usually. It's knowing A precedes B.
Andy, I wondered whether you were using focus stacking for a lot of those images that had great foregrounds and great backgrounds.
No, those were all hyperfocal distance. I have an app on my phone and gets me pretty much right there, but then I will also fine tune it by pressing the depth of field preview button on the camera just to fine tune the focus just precisely so that the foreground subject is extremely sharp.
Great job.
Yep,
Andy,
no focus stacking.
Andy, what app do you use for your hyperfocal distance?
There's one on PhotoPills. Do you use that one, Andy?
No.
There are lots of them.
Yeah, there's a lot of them out there. DOF Calc, C-A-L-C, it lets you plug in the camera that you're using. I have 3 of them on my phone, but DOF Calc is the one I use primarily because it allows you to select your camera model, your focal length, your aperture size, then it gives you your, calculates your hyperfocal distance for you. And then when it says 3.75 feet, well, there isn't a mark on your camera exactly for 3.75 feet. And so I get it close to that. Then I use the depth of field preview to fine tune the focus.
Is that T-A-L-K?
C-A-L-C.
T-A-L-C?
No, C-A-L-C.
As in calculate.
Oh.
As in calculator, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. This isn't a program that elicits a lot of questions. It's thought-provoking, make you really rethink what you're doing out there in the field to create better images.
Andy, you said, I agree with I loved the depth of field on a lot of those photos that were great. The other question I was wondering is, you mentioned with the bald eagle photo that you have kind of your general settings that you would use for like wildlife and movement. Do you have kind of like a standard or like what you would start with?
I try not to do wildlife less than 2,000th of a second. You'd be surprised at how much detail you get up there when you're that fast, like with that eagle coming in. Sometimes the weather doesn't allow for 2,000th, so my other buffer is 1,000th of a second. When I get below 1,000th of a second, it's like I'm done with wildlife behavior because it's going to be blurry, soft.
Yeah.
So that, and with a 600 f4, I typically will shoot at 6172 for an f-stop. So I bumped the, I basically start at 640 for an ISO, maybe even 1,000th, to be able to give a little bit more depth of field with the 604 by going up to a 6.1 or 7.2 f-stop, just for that couple of inches depth of field there. Like if I pulled up that elk that was going towards another elk with its head and all of its tines being sharp, it's by giving that little bit more depth of field that you get the depth of his rack, all of them in focus.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Andy, you said you didn't use hyperfocal length rather than focus stacking. Do you not like the results from focus stacking?
I've never really played with it, either in Photoshop or one of the specialty programs that does focus stacking. I do have, which program is that?
Well, there's On One and Helicon Focus.
Yeah, see, I had Helicon Focus and where's Helicon Focus? I did a review of 2 different focus stacking programs. And I'm trying to, Zerene Stacker, Z-E-R-E-N-E. Zerene Stacker, I found it to do a better job with focus stacking than Helicon Focus did. sharpness and then the color saturation was much better in Zarine Stacker. They're both about $175, so you need to be doing a lot of stacking to get your money's worth out of those. But I prefer using hyperfocal distance. I think I do a fair job with my hyperfocal and teaching it in the field.
Very good. Well, I think that might be it, and it's been a great presentation. I sure appreciate it, Andy.
Yeah, no problem. Glad to have done for you.
Okay. Well,
yeah,
and
Tom will